Today we're going to learn how to find the area of trapezoids. Trapezoids are what we consider a composite shape, so a shape that is made up of other shapes, so like we can break it down. So to find the area of a trapezoid, we break it up into shapes that we already know how to find the area of. Okay. So let's look at these three examples. These are all types of trapezoids right here. And think to yourself or on your paper, start breaking them up into shapes that you would already know how to find the area of. For example, I could break this one up right here and it would become a rectangle and a triangle. Okay, so go ahead and do that on your paper. So for example, I would break this one up right here into a rectangle and two triangles. Same thing over here, it's just a little bit of a different shape, just bigger triangles, a rectangle, and two triangles. Okay, so trapezoids are going to be made of rectangles and triangles, which we know how to find the area of them. For rectangles, remember we'd find the area by doing base times height. And then for triangles, we would do base times height and then either times 1/2 or divided by 2, whichever one you prefer. So I'll put both of those there. It's up to you which one you like to do. To show our work when finding the area of trapezoids, we show our work for each shape. So you write the name or number of the shape. So what I mean by that is that I'm going to go ahead and like number this as shape number 1 that I'm finding the area of, shape number 2, and shape number 3. This makes it really easy that I'm using colors for it also. So if you have colors and you want to use that, you can. But numbers work just as well. Then we write the formula for that shape. So if we're doing shape number 1, that's a triangle. So I would write base times height. And then I'm going to do the divide by 2 one since that's most of your favorites. Then I substitute in the numbers for the base and the height. So my base in that purple triangle is going to be 3. My height is going to be 5. So I would do 3 times 5 and then divide that by 2. Well, 3 times 5 is 15 divided by 2. We could put 15 into long division in order to solve it, or we can break 15 into 14 and 1 because 14 plus 1 is 15. And if we just divide each of those by 2, we can add those answers together. So 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. Think of like $1. Half of $1 would be 50 cents. So we'd add those together to get 7.5 or $7.50. So our last step for that shape would be to write your answer with the correct label. So this would be 7.5 centimeters squared. Okay, so that's triangle number 1. Now I've got rectangle number 2. For rectangles, remember I do base times height. My base of that rectangle would be 5. My height would also be 5. So I would do 5 times 5. 5 times 5 equals 25 centimeters squared. Last but not least, I have my third shape, my third triangle, or my second triangle, but my third shape. I would have base times height and then either times half or divided by 2. My base is 4, my height is 5, so I'd have 4 times 5 divided by 2. 4 times 5 is 20 divided by 2 would give me 10 centimeters squared. Now I can't just leave all these answers like this, okay, because it doesn't want to know the area of every separate shape. It wants to know the area of the whole entire shape. So we just found the area of all the little pieces, and now we have to put them together to get the area of the whole shape. So that last step, we need to add all the areas of those shapes together. So I'd have 7.5, 25, and 10. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group together my 10 and my 25 to get a 35. Then I've got my 7.5, and I have to line that up, my ones place with my ones place. So on that 35, I will have to add a 0.0, and we will add those up. 0 plus 5 is 5. When I'm adding, I just drop my decimal straight down because they are right on top of each other. Then I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Write my 2, carry my 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Final answer would be 42.5 centimeters squared. Okay. Okay, so let's go on and do another example. If you feel like from this one example you've got this process down, feel free to pause the video, try this next one on your own, and then resume it to check. Just make sure we keep resuming to check after each one to make sure that we're not making a big mistake or anything that we're doing in the next problem as well. Okay, so this next problem is a trapezoid that does not have 2 triangles. It's only going to have the 1 triangle. Okay, and you're going to notice it's missing some measurements. So let's go ahead and let's number our shapes. We've got our rectangle number 1 and our triangle number 2. Now I know I didn't do this in the last one, but I always like to start with the easiest one. That's my rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and do base times height. My base of that rectangle, well, they don't tell me what this is right here. It says the whole thing is 8 at the bottom. They don't tell me what this is, so I look to the top. Whatever the bottom is, the top is also. So since on the top it's 5, that would mean my base down here from here to here would also be 5. Okay, so I'd have 5 times my height, just going up the side here, 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Then I have meters squared. Okay, shape number 2, I have a triangle. So that's going to be base times height divided by 2. My base of that triangle, now it does not tell me what that measurement is. Okay, but if I know the whole entire thing is 8, and I know the rectangle part is 5, if the whole thing's 8, this part for the triangle would have to be 3, because 5 plus 3 would equal that 8. So sometimes you're going to have to find out what those measurements are for yourself by doing some subtraction or just thinking about like 5 plus what equals 8. So my base is going to be 3. My height, now I'm going to erase some of these lines on here so it's not so confusing. My height is not written over here, but we know in a rectangle, the right side would be the same as the left side. And there is a measurement on the left side, so it'd be 4. And then divided by 2. So I'd have 3 times 4 is 12. Divided by 2 would give me 6 meters squared. So I've got my 20 meters squared. I've got my 6 meters squared. I want the area of the whole entire thing. So I add those together to get a final answer of 26 meters squared. Okay, again, we've gone through a lot of examples so far, so if you're feeling like you can pause the video and try this next one on your own, go ahead and do that. This next one, again, I'm going to label into different numbers. I'm going to start with that rectangle. I always like to just get the easiest one out of the way. Base times height, 6 times 9.5. Over here on my side, I'd stack 9.5. 9.5 has more digits, so it should go on the top, 6 on the bottom. 6 times 5 is 30. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 3 is 57. Now remember, when we multiply decimals, we forget about the decimal, but then put it back in. There's one number after a decimal here. There are 0 numbers after the decimal here. So I'll put one number after the decimal in my answer. 57.0 is the same thing as 57, so I'm just going to keep it a wrong color. 57 feet squared. That was shape number 2. All right, now I've got shape number 1 is a triangle. So base times height divided by 2. My base of that triangle is 3. My height is 6. It's not times 2, divided by 2. 3 times 6 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9 feet squared. Last but not least, I've got shape 3, also a triangle. Base times height divided by 2. Base is 3. My height is not written, so I look over to the other side, would be 6. In rectangles, the opposite sides are the same. Again, it's going to be 18 divided by 2, which will be 9 feet squared. Last but not least, I do have to add those all up together. I'm going to group my two 9s together to make an 18. And then I'm going to stack my 57. I'm just going to scroll up a little. My 57 and my 18 to the side and add those up. 8 plus 7 is 15. Write my 5, carry my 1. 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Final answer here would be 75 feet squared. Okay. If you have not yet tried to solve a problem on your own, I want you to pause the video and try this next one on your own. If not, the next two even. Okay, but you can always resume after this one to check before you get started on that last one if you'd like. All right, here we've got a triangle and a rectangle. Rectangle first. I always like to start with my rectangle. Base times height, 11 times 16. I guess I decided not to make it easy on you guys today. It's good for you. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. Done with that 1. Add my 0 placeholder. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. Add those up. 6 plus 0 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. 1 plus nothing is 1. So it would be 176 yards squared. Then I have my handy dandy triangle, number 1. My base of that triangle, well, first I have to do base times height divided by 2. Getting ahead of myself. My base is 7. My height is 11. That would give me 77 divided by 2. I showed you how we could like turn that into a 76 and a 1 and divide. So now I'll show you the long division in case you like this way better. 2 can fit into 7 3 times because 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract, we've got 1 left. Bring down our 7. 2 can fit into 17 8 times because 8 times 2 is 16. Subtract 1. We're left with a remainder. We have to add a decimal in order to add another number. Remember, if we did not add that decimal, 770 is very different than 77.0. So make sure we put that decimal. When we add that decimal in our number here, we have to add it in our answer. 2 can fit into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. No remainder. We are good to go. So this is going to be a 38.5 or 38 5/10 yards squared. Last step, we have to add those two together. When we stack those, since one number has a decimal, we have to make sure we're lining up those decimal places. So that's going to be a 176. 76 and 38 have to line up. Then I've got my 0.5, 0.0. We are adding because we want the area of the entire shape. So we take the first piece and the second piece and put them together. 5 plus 0 is 5. Bring down my decimal. 6 plus 8 is 14. 7 plus 3 is 10 plus 1 is 11. 1 plus 1 is 2. Final answer will be 214.5 yards squared. All right. Again, if you haven't already paused this video, try this next part on your own and then resume the video to check. We will start by breaking this up into 3 shapes. I'd like to start with my rectangle. So I've got my base times height, 7 times 12. If I don't have a multiplication chart on me, I can always stack them to the side. 12 on top of 7. 84 feet squared. Then I've got shape number 2 is a triangle, or sorry, shape number 1 is a triangle. Base times height divided by 2. I've got base of 4, height of 7. 4 times 7 is 28. 28 divided by 2 is 14 feet squared. Shape number 3, also a triangle, base times height divided by 2. We've got our base of 4. Height is not labeled, so we look to the other side. So if this is the right side, we look to the left side, and it is a 7. You're going to notice that these two triangles are the same. It's not always going to be that way, but when you notice that they are the same, you don't have to re-show all your work. You can just give me another 14 feet squared. Okay, when this one is going to be the exact same as this one, you don't have to go through all those steps again because you already showed me how to do it once. You can just make sure you write down the 14 feet squared, because students who don't go through all the steps will then usually forget to add this in later, so just keep that in mind. Now I want the area of the entire shape, so I have to add all those pieces together. I'm going to group my 14 and 14 together to be a 28. And then I've got 28 plus 84. If you need the summary area, you might want to show it over here. 8 plus 4 is 12. 8 plus 2 is 10. Plus 1 is 11. So my final answer here would be 112 feet squared. And that is how we find the area of a trapezoid.